If being a vampire feels like a curse, why does it hurt more to be alone? Lena Whitmore stood at the edge of a rooftop, 23 stories above the empty street, the city lights flickering below like distant stars she no longer belonged to, her fingers trembling not from the cold but from the hunger she refused to satisfy, a hunger that had followed her for 3 years, whispering, clawing, reminding her every second of what she had become. She squeezed her eyes shut as the early morning sun began to rise over the skyline, golden light stretching across the horizon. This was the moment, she had timed it perfectly, sunrise at exactly 6:12 a.m., she had checked 3 different apps just to be sure, because if she couldn't live like a human, she would rather not live at all. Just step forward, she whispered to herself, her voice shaking, just 1 step, but before she could move, the light vanished, swallowed whole as a shadow fell over her, not cast by a building, not by anything natural, but by someone standing directly behind her. Close enough that she could feel the cold radiating off his presence, ancient, still, absolute. "You're standing in the wrong place for a goodbye," the voice said, low and controlled, with an accent she couldn't place but felt in her bones. Lena turned, her eyes flashing red for just a second before she forced them back, and that's when she saw him, tall, dressed in black that seemed to absorb the dawn, his face too perfect, too still, like something carved out of marble, but it was his eyes. That made her chest tighten, pale gold, not glowing, not threatening, just watching, like he already knew everything about her. "Move," she snapped, stepping back, "this doesn't concern you," but he didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even seem to breathe. "Everything about you concerns me," he said quietly, and something in the way he said it made her stomach twist. "I don't want this," she shot back, her voice breaking despite her effort to stay cold. "I don't want the hunger, I don't want the nights, I don't want to look at people and feel like, she stopped, unable to finish, because saying it out loud would make it real, the monster she believed she was. The man studied her for a long second, then stepped closer, and Lena felt it instantly, the shift in the air, like the entire world had just tilted toward him. "You don't hate being a vampire," he said softly, "you hate being one without meaning." She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "You don't get it," she said, "you don't feel this," but his gaze didn't waver, didn't soften, didn't break. "I have lived for over 600 years, he replied. "I understand more than you think," and for the first time, something flickered inside her, not fear, not anger, something else, something dangerous, something like curiosity. But before she could speak again, the air behind them shifted, footsteps, fast, precise, controlled. Lena turned sharply as figures emerged from the stairwell door, dressed in dark coats, their eyes fixed on her with cold intent. "There she is," one of them said, and Lena's heart dropped, because she knew exactly who they were. The council didn't tolerate anomalies, and she was the biggest one they had seen in decades. She stepped back instinctively, ready to run, but the man in front of her didn't move, didn't react, didn't even glance at them. Instead, he reached for her hand, slow, deliberate, giving her time to pull away, but she didn't, she couldn't, because something in his presence held her there, and the moment his fingers brushed her skin, everything stopped, the wind, the city, even the sound of her own breath. A faint glow spread across his wrist, intricate and ancient, mirrored on her own palm, and Lena's eyes widened as she stared at it, her voice barely a whisper. "What is this?" The man looked at her, and for the first time, there was something in his expression that wasn't control, wasn't power, but something far more dangerous, something that made her pulse stutter. "This," he said quietly, "is the reason you were never meant to face this world alone." The symbol burned faintly against Lena's skin, not painful, not warm, just there, like it had always belonged, like it had been waiting for her to notice it. Her breath caught as she tried to pull her hand back, but his grip did not tighten, did not force, it simply remained, steady, unshaken, as if the world itself would have to move before he did. Behind them the council figures slowed, their confident steps faltering as their eyes locked onto the mark. A silence fell that felt heavier than any sound. "That is not possible," one of them said under his breath, and for the first time Lena saw something she had never seen in their kind before, uncertainty. She turned back to the man in front of her, her voice low, almost unsteady. "Who are you?" And this time he answered without hesitation, "Lucien Voss." The name settled into the air like something ancient, something remembered even if she had never heard it before, and Then it clicked, the stories whispered in corners, the one name no one spoke lightly, the one presence that ruled without needing to prove it. Her stomach tightened. The king, she whispered, and his gaze did not shift, did not confirm, did not deny, it simply held hers as if that answer no longer mattered. Let her go. One of the council members stepped forward carefully, not aggressive, not reckless, but cautious now, measuring every move. She is unstable, a deviation, we will handle this. Lucien did not look at them, did not acknowledge the command. Instead his thumb brushed lightly over the mark on her palm, and Lena felt it then, not pain, not hunger, something else, something deeper, like a memory she had never lived, a warmth that did not burn, a quiet that did not suffocate. Her knees nearly gave out from the shock of it. You feel that, he said softly, and she nodded before she could stop herself, confusion flooding her expression. That is what you have been missing, he continued, his voice calm, certain, as if explaining something simple. Not control, not discipline, not denial. His eyes softened just slightly. Connection. Lena shook her head immediately, pulling her hand back this time, stumbling a step away from him. No, she said, her voice rising, no, do not do that, do not stand there and act like this is something beautiful. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her control slipping. You do not know what it is like to wake up every night wishing you were anything else. The wind picked up around them, sharp and restless, matching the storm building inside her. You do not know what it feels like to look at yourself and see something wrong. Lucien finally moved then, one slow step toward her, not threatening, not forceful, just present. You are not wrong, he said, and the certainty in his voice made her angrier than anything else. Stop saying that, she snapped, her eyes flashing again. I cannot even feed without feeling sick, I cannot even exist the way your world expects me to. I am not like you. The last words came out quieter, almost broken. The council shifted again behind them, uneasy now, waiting for an opening, waiting for permission. Lucien's gaze flickered briefly in their direction before returning to her, and when he spoke again, his voice carried something new, not just power, not just calm, but something that felt dangerously close to understanding. That is exactly why you are, he said, and Lena froze, the words landing somewhere deep, somewhere she had tried to bury for years. Come with me, he added, extending his hand again, not commanding, not demanding, simply offering. I will show you what you are before they decide what you should be. Lena stared at his hand, then at the figures behind him, then back at him, her heart racing in a way that had nothing to do with fear, because for the first time since this all began, she felt something she did not recognize, not hunger, not shame, something far more dangerous, something that made staying exactly where she was feel impossible. Her fingers hovered inches from his hand, close enough to feel the stillness that surrounded him, close enough to know that if she took it, nothing in her life would remain the same. The city noise below felt distant now, like it belonged to another world, another version of her that had not yet been pulled into this moment. If I go with you, she said slowly, her voice quieter but steadier than before, I am not promising anything. Lucien did not move, did not push, he only inclined his head slightly, as if that answer had already been expected. You are not required to promise anything, he replied, only to see. The simplicity of it unsettled her more than any command could have. Behind him the council shifted again, tension rising like a storm about to break. This is your final warning, one of them said, his tone controlled but strained. Release her, your majesty, or we will consider this interference. Lena felt the weight of those words, not just a threat but a boundary being drawn, a line. She had unknowingly stepped across the moment their hands touched. Lucien finally turned his head slightly, his gaze brushing over them for the briefest second, and the air changed instantly. The tension snapped into something heavier, something absolute. You may consider whatever you wish, he said calmly, it will not alter what is already in motion. No one spoke after that, no one stepped forward, and Lena realized something she had never fully understood before. Power did not always need to be loud, sometimes it simply existed, and everything else adjusted around it. Her attention returned to his hand, still extended, still waiting, not demanding, just there, and slowly, before she could think herself out of it, she placed her hand in his. The moment their skin met again, the world shifted, not dramatically, not violently, but undeniably. The rooftop, the city, the rising sun all blurred for a split second, like a lens being adjusted, and then everything sharpened again. but different. The air felt clearer, the silence deeper. Lena inhaled sharply, her senses catching something she had never noticed before, the subtle rhythm of the world itself, steady, alive, connected. She looked up at him, startled. "What did you do?" she asked, but there was no accusation in her voice this time, only confusion, curiosity. Lucien studied her for a moment, then stepped past her, guiding her gently toward the stairwell door. "I did not do anything," he said, "I simply removed what was blocking you from feeling it." Lena frowned, following him instinctively, glancing back once at the council who now stood completely still, watching, calculating, but not interfering, as if they had already lost something they could not take back. The stairwell door opened without a sound as Lucien pushed it, the darkness inside cool and quiet, a sharp contrast to the glowing skyline behind them. Lena hesitated at the threshold, the last line between what she knew and whatever waited beyond. "If this is some kind of trick," she said, stopping just inside, her voice low again, guarded. Lucien paused a few steps ahead, turning just enough for her to see the side of his face, the calm, the control, the certainty that never seemed to waver. "If it were a trick," he said, "you would not have felt peace when you touched me." The words landed softly, but they struck deeper than anything else he had said, because she had felt it, even if she did not want to admit it, even if it terrified her more than the hunger ever had. Lena swallowed, her grip tightening slightly before she released his hand, stepping fully into the stairwell, the door closing behind them with a quiet finality, sealing off the rooftop, the sun, and everything she thought she understood about herself. As they descended the concrete steps, each footstep echoing softly in the enclosed space, Lena became aware of something new, something subtle but constant, like a thread connecting her to him, not pulling, not forcing, just there, steady, present, impossible to ignore. And for the first time since she had become what she was, the silence inside her did not feel empty. "You feel it now, do not you?" Lucien said as his voice echoed softly through the narrow stairwell, each step they took carrying them deeper away from the world above. Lena did not answer right away, because she did feel it, something steady beneath her ribs, not hunger, not emptiness, something calmer, something she did not trust. The concrete walls around them seemed too close, too quiet, and yet for the first time, the silence did not press against her like a weight, it followed her like a presence. "It is not real," she said finally, more to herself than to him, her fingers brushing lightly against her palm where the mark had formed. It was still there, faint, glowing just beneath the surface of her skin like a secret she could not hide. Lucien slowed his steps but did not stop. "It is more real than anything you have felt since you turned," he replied, and the certainty in his voice made her chest tighten again. Not with fear this time, but with resistance, because if he was right, then everything she had believed about herself was wrong, and that was a truth she was not ready to face. They reached the bottom of the stairwell and stepped into a quiet underground corridor, the air cooler here, smoother, almost untouched by the outside world. Soft lights lined the walls, casting a dim glow that reflected faintly in Lucien's eyes as he walked ahead of her, unhurried, as if time itself adjusted to his pace. Lena followed a few steps behind, her senses sharper now, catching details she would have ignored before, the faint hum of electricity, the subtle shift of air through hidden vents, even the distant echo of footsteps far away. Everything felt connected, woven together in a way she had never noticed, and it unsettled her more than the chaos above ever had. "Where are you taking me?" she asked, her voice steady but cautious. Lucien did not look back as he answered, "Somewhere you will not be interrupted." The simplicity of his words did not ease her tension, if anything, it deepened it. Because nothing about this felt simple, nothing about him ever would. They turned a corner and the corridor opened into a vast chamber, high ceilings stretching overhead, walls lined with dark stone and ancient symbols carved so precisely they seemed to hum with quiet energy. Lena stopped at the threshold, her breath catching as the space unfolded before her. It was not just a room, it was something older, something built with intention, with memory. "This is not possible," she whispered, stepping forward slowly, her eyes scanning the intricate carvings, patterns that felt familiar in a way she could not explain, like a language her mind recognized but could not translate. Lucien stopped in the center of the chamber and turned to face her fully for the first time since they entered. "It has always been possible," he said, watching her closely. "You simply were never meant to see it alone." Lena shook her head, overwhelmed, her thoughts racing. "Why me?" she asked, her voice breaking slightly despite her effort to stay composed. There are thousands of vampires, stronger, older, better than me. Why would something like this be connected to me? Lucian stepped closer, not invading her space, but close enough that she could feel that same quiet presence again, steady and unshaken. Because you are not like them, he said, his tone softer now, not commanding, not distant, but certain in a different way. You have spent years rejecting what you are, believing that makes you broken, but it does not. Lena's jaw tightened, her defenses rising again. Then what does it make me? She challenged, her eyes searching his for an answer she was not sure she wanted. Lucian held her gaze, unflinching, and for a brief moment, the entire chamber seemed to fall into stillness around them, as if even the walls were waiting. It makes you rare, he said quietly, and rare things are never meant to be understood by those who fear them. The words settled between them, heavy, undeniable, and Lena felt that thread again, stronger now, pulling not at her body, but at something deeper, something she had spent years trying to silence, and for the first time, she did not immediately push it away. The silence in the chamber did not feel empty, it felt alive, like it was listening, waiting, reacting to every breath Lena took. Her gaze moved slowly across the carved symbols along the walls, and the longer she looked, the more they seemed to shift, not physically, but in meaning, like something inside her was beginning to understand them without words. I have seen these before, she whispered, her voice uncertain, her hand lifting instinctively toward one of the markings, but stopping just short of touching it. Lucian watched her closely, his expression unreadable but attentive. Not with your eyes, he said, but with your blood. Lena frowned, pulling her hand back slightly. That does not make any sense, she replied, but even as she said it, a faint warmth stirred beneath her skin, the same quiet presence she had felt when he touched her, steady, undeniable. She turned to him again, frustration creeping into her voice. You keep saying things like that, like I am supposed to just understand, but I do not. Lucian stepped closer, not overwhelming, not pressing, just closing the distance enough for his presence to settle around her again, grounding, constant. You have spent years silencing what you feel, he said. It will not return all at once. Lena let out a slow breath, her shoulders tightening as she tried to hold on to her resistance, because letting go of it felt dangerous, like stepping into something she could not control. I did not silence it, she argued. I rejected it. Her eyes met his, sharper now, more certain. There is a difference. Lucian held her gaze, unshaken. Not to your nature, he replied, and that answer hit deeper than she expected, because part of her knew it was true, even if she did not want it to be. The chamber seemed to hum faintly around them, the symbols catching the low light, reflecting it in soft, shifting patterns across the floor. Lena glanced down and noticed something she had missed before, faint lines etched into the stone beneath her feet, forming a circular pattern that centered exactly where she stood. Her breath caught as she stepped back slightly. What is this? She asked, her voice quieter now, more cautious. Lucian followed her movement with his eyes, then looked down at the markings. A place of truth, he said simply. Lena shook her head again, tension rising in her chest. I do not need a place to tell me what I already know, she said quickly. I know what I am. But even as she said it, the words felt weaker than they ever had before, like they no longer held the same weight. Lucian stepped forward into the circle, his presence shifting the air again, not heavier, not threatening, just undeniable. Then say it, he said calmly. Lena hesitated, her throat tightening, because suddenly the answer did not come as easily as it always had. The word she used to define herself felt distant, incomplete. She forced herself to speak anyway. I am a mistake, she said, her voice steady at first, then faltering slightly. The moment the words left her, the symbols beneath her feet flickered faintly, a soft glow pulsing outward like a quiet response. Lena froze, her eyes widening as she looked down. That is not possible, she whispered, but the light did not fade, it lingered, gentle but present. Lucian watched her carefully, his voice softer now. The chamber does not react to lies, he said. Lena shook her head quickly, stepping back again, her breathing uneven. I am not lying, she insisted, but her voice lacked the certainty it once had, because the space around her felt different now, like it was challenging her, like it was asking for something deeper than the words she had repeated for years. Lucian moved slightly closer, his gaze steady, unwavering. Then say it again, he said. Lena hesitated, her chest tightening as she searched for the same conviction, but it was not there, not like before. Her voice came out quieter this time, almost uncertain. I am a mistake. The glow beneath her feet dimmed, not completely gone, but weaker, like it was rejecting the answer. Lena stared at it, her heart racing, confusion flooding her thoughts. Why is it doing that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucien did not look away from her, his words calm but certain. Because you are starting to doubt it, and that realization hit harder than anything else, not because it proved him right, but because it proved something inside her was changing, and for the first time, she did not know if she wanted to stop it. The dim glow beneath Lena's feet faded into a quiet pulse, like a heartbeat that refused to disappear completely, and that unsettled her more than if it had vanished entirely, because it meant something was still there, something waiting, something unfinished. This is not real, she said again, but this time the words felt thinner, weaker, like they no longer belonged to her the way they used to. Lucien did not respond immediately. He simply watched her, his presence steady, unchanging, as if he had all the time in the world for her to understand, and somehow that patience made her more uneasy than pressure ever could. You are trying to hold on to something that no longer fits, he said finally, his voice calm, measured, each word landing exactly where it needed to. Lena shook her head quickly, stepping out of the circle as if distance alone could break whatever influence the chamber had over her. No, she said, sharper now. Defensive. I know exactly what I am. I have lived with it every single night. Her voice rose slightly, not loud, but strained. I know what it feels like to lose control, to feel that hunger, to look at people and see something I do not want to see. She stopped, her breath catching, because even as she described it, the sensation did not hit her the same way it used to. It was there, but distant, muted, like a memory instead of a reality. Lucien stepped closer again, slow, deliberate, never forcing her to move, but always closing the space between them. And yet you are standing here, he said, not consumed by it, not driven by it. Lena frowned, her confusion deepening. That does not mean anything, she replied, but her voice lacked conviction, because part of her knew it did, part of her could feel the difference, even if she could not explain it. Lucien lifted his hand slightly, not touching her, just holding it between them. Then show me, he said. Lena blinked, caught off guard. Show you what? She asked. Lucien's gaze did not waver. Show me the hunger you fear. The words landed quietly, but they carried weight, expectation, something that challenged her more than anything else he had said. Lena hesitated, her instincts pulling in two directions, one telling her to step back, to refuse, to protect herself from whatever this was, the other pulling her forward, urging her to confront something she had spent years avoiding. You do not understand, she said again, softer this time. It is not something I can just turn on and off. Lucien's expression did not change, but there was something in his eyes now, something steady, something that felt like trust. You are not turning it on, he said, you are acknowledging that it exists without letting it control you. Lena stared at him, the words settling slowly, painfully, because they contradicted everything she believed, everything she had built her survival on. Her hands clenched slightly at her sides, her breathing uneven. And if I cannot? She asked quietly. If I lose control? Lucien answered without hesitation. You will not. The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt, and that terrified her more than anything else, because it meant he believed in something she did not yet believe in herself. Lena closed her eyes for a moment, drawing in a slow breath, and for the first time, she did not try to suppress the feeling that rose inside her. She did not push it away, did not reject it, she simply let it exist. The hunger stirred, faint but present, but it did not overwhelm her, it did not consume her, it stayed exactly where it was, controlled, contained. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion flashing across her face. That is not possible, she whispered, but the truth was already there, undeniable. She looked at Lucien, searching his expression for an explanation, for something that would make sense of this, but all she found was calm, steady understanding. You were never meant to fight your nature, he said quietly, only to understand it. And for the first time, Lena did not immediately argue, because for the first time, she was not entirely sure he was wrong. The silence after her words lingered, not empty but full, like the chamber itself was absorbing everything she had just realized. Lena stood there, unmoving, her breath steady but unfamiliar, because for the first time it did not feel like she was fighting herself just to exist. The hunger was still there, she could feel it, quiet, controlled, like something waiting instead of something demanding, and that difference unsettled her more than anything before. Why is it different? She asked finally, her voice low, almost cautious, as if speaking too loudly might break whatever fragile balance she had found. Lucien did not hesitate. Because you stopped treating it like an enemy, he said. And the simplicity of the answer made her frown. It is an enemy, she replied quickly, the old instinct rising again, but it did not feel as strong as before, did not hold the same certainty. Lucien stepped closer, just enough that his presence settled around her again, calm, unshaken. No, he said quietly, it is a part of you that was never meant to be faced alone. The words landed deeper this time, not as something to argue against, but as something to consider. Something that made the tightness in her chest loosen just slightly. Lena looked down at her hands, flexing her fingers slowly, feeling the faint echo of that connection still lingering beneath her skin, the mark on her palm pulsing softly, not bright, not overwhelming, just present, alone. She repeated under her breath, the word feeling heavier now, more significant than it had ever been before, because she had spent years believing that isolation was the only way to survive, the only way to protect others from what she was, but now that belief felt incomplete, like it was missing something she had never questioned before. Lucien watched her carefully, his gaze steady, patient. You built your control through isolation, he said, and it kept you alive, but it also kept you disconnected. Lena lifted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in thought. Disconnected from what? She asked, and for the first time, there was no sharpness in her voice, no immediate rejection, just a quiet need to understand. Lucien held her gaze, and when he answered, his voice carried something new, something softer, something that felt almost like truth being revealed instead of imposed. From what you are meant to become. Lena stilled, the words settling slowly, carefully, because they did not feel like a command, they felt like a possibility, and that was far more dangerous. Her mind raced, trying to hold on to the version of herself she had known for so long, the rules she had lived by, the boundaries she had never crossed, but they no longer fit as easily. They no longer explained what she was feeling now. I do not want to become anything, she said quietly, but the words lacked force, lacked the certainty they once carried. Lucien did not argue, did not correct her, he simply took another step closer, close enough now that she could feel the quiet rhythm of his presence again. Steady, grounding. That is because you believe becoming means losing control, he said, but control is not about suppression. Lena's gaze flickered, something shifting again. Something small but undeniable. Then what is it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper now. Lucien did not answer immediately. Instead he lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to react, time to step away if she wanted to, but she did not move, she did not pull back. And when his fingers gently brushed against her wrist, the world did not shatter, the hunger did not surge. Instead that same quiet connection returned, stronger now, clearer, like something aligning into place. Control, he said softly, his voice steady, certain, is knowing you are not alone in it. Lena's breath caught, not from fear, not from resistance, but from something else, something unfamiliar, something that made the space between them feel smaller, safer, and for the first time, she did not instinctively pull away, because for the first time, the idea of not being alone did not feel like a weakness, it felt like something she had been missing all along. The moment his fingers touched her wrist, something deeper than sensation moved through Lena, not a surge, not a loss of control, but a quiet alignment, like pieces of something scattered inside her were finally settling into place. Her breath slowed without her forcing it, her thoughts no longer racing to suppress or deny, and for the first time, the hunger did not feel like a threat, it felt like a presence she could acknowledge without fear. This does not make sense, she whispered, but her voice no longer carried the sharp resistance it once had. Lucien did not pull his hand away, did not tighten his hold, he simply remained there, steady, allowing her to feel what she had spent years avoiding. It does, he said softly, you were never meant to carry it alone. Lena's gaze lifted to meet his, searching, uncertain, but no longer rejecting. Then why did it feel like that? She asked, her voice quieter now, almost fragile in a way she would have never allowed before. Why did it feel like I was losing myself every time I let it exist? Lucien's expression shifted slightly, not into something soft, but into something deeper, something that held understanding shaped by time. Because you were facing it without balance, he answered, you denied one part of yourself, so the other part grew louder, more unstable. Lena frowned, the words sinking in slowly, painfully, because they forced her to confront something she had never considered, that the way she survived might have been the very thing that kept her broken. So I was the one making it worse, she said under her breath, not accusing, not angry, just realizing. Lucien shook his head slightly. You were surviving. He corrected, there is a difference. Lena let out a slow breath, her shoulders lowering just a fraction, the tension she carried for years beginning to loosen in ways she could not fully understand. The chamber around them seemed to respond again, the faint glow along the walls strengthening just enough to be noticed, like it recognized the shift inside her, like it had been waiting for this moment all along. This place, she said, glancing around, her voice steadier now, it reacts to what I feel. Lucien followed her gaze briefly before returning his attention to her. It responds to truth, he said, and you are beginning to allow yourself to feel it. Lena looked back at him, something new in her expression, not fear, not anger, something quieter, something more open. And what happens if I do? She asked, the question carrying weight, not just curiosity, but risk. Lucien did not hesitate. Then you stop being divided, he said, and you start becoming whole. The word lingered in the air, heavy, unfamiliar, because it described something she had never believed was possible for her. Lena's chest tightened slightly, not with panic, but with something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. She looked down at their hands, still connected, still steady, and for once, she did not feel the urge to pull away. And you think this, she said slowly, choosing her words carefully, this connection, this, whatever this is, her fingers moved slightly against his, testing, confirming that it was real. You think this is the reason? Lucien's gaze softened just slightly, enough for her to notice, enough to make something in her chest shift again. It is part of it, he said, but not the reason. Lena frowned, confusion returning, but not as sharp, not as defensive. Then what is? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper now. Lucien held her gaze, and when he spoke, his words were quieter, but carried more weight than anything else he had said. The reason, he said, is that you were never meant to discover who you are without someone who understands it. Lena stilled, the words settling deeper than she expected, because they did not feel like control, did not feel like power, they felt like something else entirely, something that made the space between them feel different, closer, steadier. And for the first time, she did not question why she was still standing there. She only realized that she did not want to leave. The quiet between them no longer felt like something to escape, it felt like something to understand. Lena stood still, her hands still in his, her thoughts no longer fighting for control but slowly unfolding, piece by piece, the weight she had carried for years shifting into something lighter, something she did not yet recognize but could no longer deny. So what happens now? She asked, her voice calm, not guarded, not resisting, just asking, and that alone felt like a change she could not ignore. Lucien did not release her hand, but his grip remained gentle, unchanged, as if he had never intended to hold her there, only to stand with her. Now, he said quietly, you decide whether you continue living as something you hate, or begin understanding something you were never meant to fear. Lena lowered her gaze slightly, the words settling deep, because for the first time, it felt like a choice, not a sentence, not a punishment, but something she could step toward or away from. And that realization made her chest tighten in a different way, not with fear, but with the weight of possibility. She looked down at the faint glow on her palm, the mark still there, steady, real, not fading, not forcing, just existing, waiting. And if I choose wrong? She asked softly, her voice almost careful now. Lucien's expression did not change, but there was something in his eyes, something steady, something that did not waver. You will not, he said, and there was no hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. Lena let out a slow breath, her fingers tightening slightly before relaxing again, because for once, she did not feel like she was standing at the edge of something she could not survive. She felt like she was standing at the beginning of something she had never allowed herself to consider. Her eyes lifted to meet his again, and for a brief moment, everything else faded, the chamber, the past, the fear, all of it falling into the background as something quieter took its place, something steadier. All this time, she said slowly, her voice thoughtful. I thought the worst part of being what I am was the hunger. She paused, her gaze softening just slightly, but it was not. Lucien watched her closely, not interrupting, not guiding, simply allowing her to reach the conclusion herself, and when she spoke again, her voice carried something new, something that had not been there before. It was being alone in it. The words lingered in the air, not heavy, not painful, just true, and the moment they settled, the chamber responded, the faint glow along the walls brightening just enough to reflect across the stone floor, subtle but undeniable, like a quiet confirmation. Lena noticed it, her breath catching slightly, but this time she did not step back. She did not question it, she simply accepted that it was there. Lucien's gaze softened just enough for her to see it, just enough to understand that something had shifted between them, not forced, not claimed, but formed. You are not alone, he said quietly, and the words did not feel like a promise, they felt like a fact, something already true whether she accepted it or not. Lena studied him for a moment, searching for something, doubt, hesitation, anything that would let her retreat back into what she knew, but there was none, only that same steady presence, that same quiet certainty, and for the first time, she did not look away, she did not pull back, she took a slow step closer instead, not out of need, not out of fear, but because something inside her was no longer telling her to run. Then show me, she said, her voice steady now, grounded in something she had not felt before. Show me what it means to live like this. Lucien held her gaze, and for a brief moment, the air around them seemed to still completely, as if even time itself had paused to witness the choice being made. Then, slowly, he inclined his head, not as a command, not as a claim, but as acknowledgement. I will, he said, and for the first time since everything began, Lena did not feel like she was losing herself. She felt like she was finally beginning to find who she had always been meant to become.